Have you ever wondered what it felt like to wake up before the sun had a name? When warmth was a rumor and daylight was a miracle that happened by accident? Tonight, let's travel back not through centuries, but through silence, to a time when humans still slept inside the earth, and the only light they knew was the trembling of fire and the glint of their own breath. It began with a question so simple it almost didn't sound human. A man woke in the middle of a frozen dawn and whispered to himself, "If the sun can warm the mountain, why can't it warm my dreams?" He wasn't a genius. He wasn't a shaman, he was just tired of being cold. Every night the wind came like a ghost, crawling through cracks in the cave, touching every piece of skin it could find. Every morning the people woke stiff as statues, half asleep, half frost. But that man, let's call him the sleeper of light, noticed something others ignored. At noon, a single thin ray slipped through a gap in the cave wall, and wherever it landed, the stone was warm. He pressed his palm against it. It was the first time in weeks he felt alive. That night, while the others wrapped themselves in animal skins, he began to carve the stone. Not much, just a slit, barely the width of 2 fingers. He didn't know he was making the world's first window. He only knew he wanted a piece of the sun to stay. When morning came, light entered the cave like a guest who had been waiting outside forever. It didn't say a word, it simply settled on the floor. The children touched it and giggled. The elders blinked and said it looked like fire without fear. The sleeper smiled. For the first time, the cave didn't feel like a grave, it felt like a room that breathed. But light has a twin called wind. And that night, the twin came howling through the same hole, a wild, invisible animal biting everything it met. No one could sleep. The sleeper sat awake, shaking, and thought, light must come in, but the wind must not. The next morning he searched for answers among the remains of a hunt. A hollow deer horn caught his eye, smooth, curved, and narrow. He pressed it into the window like a throat. Now the sunlight came through a golden tunnel, focused and warm. The air inside began to smell faintly of dust and bone. The cave looked different, almost alive. But as the sun fell, the wind found the tunnel too. It sang through it like a flute. A ghostly, endless note that no one could escape. The sleeper didn't give up. He took a piece of thin animal hide, coated it in tree resin, and stretched it over the horn like a second skin. When the next dawn arrived, light passed through the translucent surface, soft and honey-colored, but the wind stopped at the threshold. The people slept that night without fear. They called the light tamed fire. Days passed. The sleeper watched how sunlight moved, how it crawled from one side of the cave to the other like a living thing. He scratched markings on the wall to follow its path. And so, without knowing it, he created the first clock. Not of numbers, but of warmth. Morning. The beam fell near the sleeping children. Moon. It rested by the food stones. Evening. It touched the drawings of animals as if saying good night. The cave began to pulse with rhythm. Time was born from sunlight. But the sleeper wanted more. He wanted light that stayed when the sun was gone. So he found a pale riverstone, polished by ice, and left it beneath the beam all day. When darkness came, the stone glowed faintly, holding the ghost of daylight. It became their moon pebble. At night, when the wind rose, the pebble shimmered softly, just enough to make shadows look like old friends. No one tripped over fear anymore. The people began to decorate their own windows. Some hung thin bird feathers across the opening so that sunlight danced in tiny stripes. Others attached pine resin beads that clicked when wind touched them, a song for those who couldn't sleep. Even the elders began to smile in their dreams. Seasons passed. One day, snow blocked the window completely, and the cave fell into a silence so thick you could taste it. The sleeper carved 3 layers into the wall, outer, middle, and inner, a trinity of protection. The outer to face the storm, the middle to guide the light, and the inner to cradle it like an egg. The invention worked. The sun returned through 3 hearts of stone, warmer, calmer, almost human. He didn't know it then, but he had invented more than a window. He had built the first mind of architecture, a balance between inside and outside, between safety and curiosity. The people started to call the hole the eye of the cave. Every evening they would gather under it before sleep, watching the last thread of light fade from gold to gray. Children traced their dreams on the wall where the light had touched, turning them into little paintings of what they hoped to see at night. Dreams became something you could hang. Then came the discovery of sound. As the wind moved through the horn at sunset, it hummed a low, breathing note. The sleeper placed a small pebble at the base of the horn and the note changed pitch. He smiled. The cave was singing back. And so began the first lullaby. A song not from lips but from light and wind. The tribe listened, and sleep became easier. Not the heavy sleep of exhaustion, but the kind that comes when the world feels kind for a while. Over time, they added herbs and flowers near the window. When sunlight passed through them, the air filled with scent, mint, pine, something like memory. Each person had their own fragrance, their own sleep color. The cave smelled like safety. The sleeper had never meant to change the world. He only wanted to rest. But rest, it turns out, is the beginning of every civilization. Without it, there is no thought, no art, no hope. Years later, when his hair turned white and his hands could no longer carve, he sat beneath the same window and watched light fall on the next generation. Children still played with the beam, adults still gathered in its warmth. And at night, when the wind moaned, everyone slept in rhythm with that soft hum from the horn. Before his last sleep, he whispered to the one who would take his place, "Never block the light completely. Let a little of the world always come in, just enough to remind you it has still there." And when he closed his eyes, the sun was setting, its final ray passing through the horn, landing perfectly on his hands. The first windowmaker was gone. But his light remained. Centuries later, when humans built houses with real windows, glass, wood, frames, curtains, they didn't know that what they were really building was a memory of that cave, a memory of warmth earned through wonder. Every morning when sunlight pours through our rooms, it still carries his breath. The man who once whispered to the sun, "Stay with me a little longer. So if tonight you lie awake, and the darkness feels too deep, open your curtains a little. Let a thread of light remind you that even in the coldest places, someone long ago learned how to keep the sun from leaving." And when you finally close your eyes, you might just feel what he felt that first night long ago. Not just sleep, but belonging. Because every dream still begins with a window,